Guys, I went back to rewatch this episode because it's been a minute. I know this review's a little late, but guys, what is happening? Every episode, it gets better and better. We are on the precipice of the big one. Beau DeMayo's big one, which is the last 3 episodes in this series, and this episode was a lot already, okay? This episode also starts off, speaking of emotions, with an emotional experience. I think for me, I bet for a lot of people out there. Okay, before we get into that, should I say spoilers? There's going to be spoilers. Just a heads up. This episode starts off with the emotional experience. That is the funeral for Gambit. I also love the picture they chose for Gambit's funeral. It's so perfect. Even though that is slightly goofy in the best, most 90s X-Men way, it does not take away from the emotional, just the feelings you have hearing the eulogy that Nightcrawler gives, which is amazing. I gotta say, I feel like we need more Nightcrawler. I'm so excited for more Nightcrawler, hopefully, in these last 3 episodes, because, like, we need more Nightcrawler in the show, because Nightcrawler is so good. Every time he says something, it's just like, he is just the man of many quotes. I just want to quote everything he says. He's so, like, brilliant and philosophical and so, like, wise in so many ways. You know who else is wise? Wolverine, apparently. Yeah, I was not expecting Wolverine to be so emotionally mature in this show, because Wolverine, obviously, he is emotionally mature at times. He's obviously lived a long time. He does have his moments, but he can also be kind of brash and kind of like a jerk. I know that I have come down a lot on Scott in this season for being a jerk at times, but I just want you to know that I love both Cyclops and Wolverine, and I do feel like Scott is sometimes a jerk, and Wolverine is also sometimes a jerk. But in this show, he's like driving Maddie, when he thought she was Jean, to the hospital. He is telling Jean that no, she shouldn't be kissing him, she should be with Scott. That's how it is. He is, in this episode, just taking Jubilee, being the best, like, basically stepdad that Wolverine always is with his weird, like, young female kid sidekicks, and he's telling her about how she shouldn't be too upset about Rogue not being there, because Rogue, like, needs to process it in her own way. She's been through a lot, and, you know, her not being at Gambit's funeral obviously is very upsetting to Jubilee, but Wolverine is like, look, grief is different for everybody. She's got to figure it out on her own. And Nightcrawler backs him up and is like, you know, this is true. But also, Jubilee is also right, because I saw Rogue and she was looking maybe a little crazy after this experience. She maybe is going through more than just grief, you know? And of course, that is what happens in this episode, because Rogue does go rogue. And I gotta say, I love it. I love when Rogue is like, don't mess with me, because she is seriously one of the most powerful X-Men that we have. And I just feel like sometimes we don't get to showcase her in that regard as much, because she is so powerful. And I feel like in the comics a lot, and also I would say even in this show at times, they're kind of taking her out so that they don't have to, like, write how powerful she is. I know she's hard to write. She's like Hope Summers as well, as another character that I feel that gets written out a lot, because she's hard to write because she's so OP. But it was really nice to get a little bit more of a focus on Rogue in this episode. So Rogue, basically, when she goes rogue, she's trying to hunt down, Gyrick and Trask to try to figure out, like, what they did, how they did this. It's obviously awful, and she's thinking they're the prime suspects. But she's not the only one that's thinking that. So first, she goes to a military base, which, by the way, Ross is at, who you guys might know, Thaddeus Ross from Hulk. Yeah, Ross is there. Also, gotta say, I don't think that's good for PR. But then she ends up following that trail and running into Captain freaking America, who I loved seeing in this show, and I'm like, are we getting, what does this mean? Does this mean anything, or is this just a cameo? It might just be a cameo, but I'd love if it meant we were getting some kind of, like, Avengers show, or even, like, just a Captain America show. I'd be here for that. Spinoff, hello, yes, please, thank you. So when she hunts down Captain America, or, well, runs into him during her own hunt, they end up at a secret base where they find out about OZT, Operation Zero Tolerance. For those of you that have watched the Bastion short that we put up, you would know there is a thing called Operation Zero Tolerance. It's heavily intertwined with Bastion. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, it's happening. The Bastion thing is where we're going. I still don't think that's going to be fully all of it, but we'll talk about that more later at the end of the video. I'll talk about some thoughts and theories I have, honestly based on the opening credits, which this episode have also changed again. But as I said, we'll talk about that later. The base is interesting because it did remind me a little bit of the base that we get in Winter Soldier, the Hydra base. I don't know why, it just gave me that feeling. I went back and looked at the Hydra base, and I see it a little, but it's a very slight thing. I'm not saying that it means anything, it's just something I noticed, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. The other interesting thing that kind of has been happening in this episode, it's going to happen one more time as well. It happens 3 times, maybe more. I think it just happens 3 times mainly, is this idea of Rogue, after they find this out, you know, Cap has his own way he wants to deal with it, and Rogue's like, well, why don't we go together and we can deal with this together and, you know, be united on it, and it'll be good. It'll be good for us. Cap, join me. Why not? And Cap's basically like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea, because I think it might not be a good time for that, and, like, I don't think we should be, like, smashing stuff. It's not gonna look good. And she's like, it's not gonna look good because you're with a mutant? I thought you said you stood with us. What the heck is this? And then she throws his shield, and you know Cap's gonna have to walk around and find that. I mean, he can run around. He can run pretty fast, but I was like, oh man, he's a super soldier, but he's not a speedster. He's like peak physical condition. So yeah, he's gonna be having to look for that shield for a while. We also find out in this interaction between Rogue and Cap that the Sentinel that attacked, which I have been referring to as a Wild Sentinel based on the E is For Extinction story, is actually, apparently, it is a Master Mold. So a little bit different here, which makes me think we're definitely not going to get Cassandra Nova. Sad, but that's okay. We're getting Cassandra Nova in Deadpool 3, Deadpool and Wolverine, so I'll get my Cassandra Nova fix, so it's fine. We go back to Genosha after this interaction. We get to see a bit of Genosha, the aftermath. Gosh, it's devastating. But we get some really cool cameos. We got Angel Salvador. I don't know if that was Amelia Vaught who Beast was talking to, or which Amelia that was. So if that was a different Amelia, like, let me know in the comments. I wasn't so sure about that one. We get Strong Guy again. Love Strong Guy. Emma, who ends up getting found in her diamond form, which, by the way, also happens in E is For Extinction, so a nice little nod back to that. Also means Emma's still alive, which I think a lot of Emma Frost fans are rejoicing at this news. I know I was rejoicing at this news. I know I was asking, do you think this means that we're going to get Emma and Scott in a relationship maybe in the future? Maybe we will, but I also do know that Beau DeMayo is not a big shipper of Emma and Scott. He just thinks that Emma isn't as good for Scott as Jean is. A little bit of a hot take, I'm sure, for some. But I do think they're still going to maybe go that way. However, if it's DeMayo writing it, then it might be somewhat not good for Scott. We'll have to wait and see. I think Emma can be good for Scott. I think Jean is also really good for Scott, though. I don't really think either of those women are a bad fit for him. You know what? I just don't think he should be with Psylocke. I'm going to say that. There's a weird era in the 90s where Scott and Psylocke were this, like, will they, won't they thing while he was in a relationship with Jean, I believe. And I'm always like, it feels weird. I get it. Psylocke's hot. I get it. But also, what is happening? Scott, please control yourself. Scott, control yourself. Everyone control yourself. In regards to Psylocke. Just kidding. No one can control themselves. I understand. While we're in Genosha, we also get this really intense conversation that happens between Roberto and Jubilee. And this is what was making me a little bit teary-eyed when I came in, because I was just at that point in the episode, and then I was like, all right, I feel like I have enough notes. I've jogged my memory enough. I can come back and talk. But this conversation is really fascinating because it is actually based around a real conversation that happened after the events of Pulse nightclub, and it is it just hits. Like, it hit me without having even that context. And then when I was given that context after, whenever I go back to it, it's like, holy shit. It's a lot of a lot. I love the conversation that they have, and where Jubilee just basically says, you know, do you want your parents to find out, like, on the 5 o'clock news, like, who you are after you've, like, died? And the whole part where Roberto says to Jubilee, you know, this is what happens when we rub it in their faces, basically, like, when we're out and we're too out for them as mutants. And I just, the context, but also just in general, just with the mutants and the mutant hate, it's like, my heart. And I do also really enjoy Roberto's mutant coming out that we get in this episode, where he does end up deciding he's going to talk to his mom. He asks Jubilee if she'll come with him. Duh, she will. So she goes with him, and they go and talk to his mom, and his mom is like, actually, we already knew, and it's not a big deal. Like, it's all good. Don't worry about it. We love you. We accept you. We always knew. Don't you think it's weird that we've had so many mysterious fires in regards to our properties? Like, Roberto, please. We know your Sunspot, basically. But also, then we get the thing that I was talking about before. So we get this idea of kind of mutants being shown tolerance versus, I would say, true acceptance. At every turn, it feels like in this episode. It starts with Scott with the UN. Also, fun fact, I like the fact that Scott is wearing his visor backwards during that part. And then he just has his, like, ruby quartz sunglasses on. I don't know, something about that look. I was like, this is really cool. I just love that what a weird style choice that I'm into. So Scott gets turned down by the UN, who basically say, you know, we've done our best, but, like, this is all we can do. Like, it's also just not a great time. So, sorry about that. We do want to support you, but also, you know, only when it looks good. Rogue, obviously, with Captain America. Rogue saying maybe we should team up. Cap being like, oh, it's maybe not, like, a great time to team up right now. And then Bobby with his mom saying, you know, we get it, but also just be careful who you're hanging out with, like, publicly. Like, obviously, love Jubilee. Love that she's a mutant. No problem with that. Just maybe don't let people see you hang out with her. I was like, no, why? Why is this happening so many times? I mean, I get it. That's the point of the episode. But good Lord, that was a lot to watch. Oh, heartbreaking. Although I do gotta say, I feel like it might not be a great time for mutants, because Rogue did go beat up, like, a military base in this. I don't know if that's gonna come up on the news, but that's some more bad PR, I would say. Yeah. However, we also get this fantastically heartbreaking scene between Nightcrawler and Rogue. It's, like I said, at every turn, my eyes were threatening to shed tears, and with that scene, they actually did. I think it's also just, Lenore as Rogue is like, the voice work is so good. It's so much emotion, and Nightcrawler also saying to Rogue, you know, you didn't just lose one man, you lost two men. So it's like double grief, and that's a lot. And that's okay. I was like, Kurt, please stop. You're killing me. I'm gonna tear up just thinking about it right now. I have to hold it back. And of course, at the end of the episode, or near the end of the episode, we get the Bastion reveal. The reveal we all knew was coming. We knew Bastion was going to be there. But we also get some other reveals as well. We find out that it turns out Trask is a Prime Sentinel. So Prime Sentinels will be a thing, which, once again, if you watch the short, I did mention Prime Sentinels in there, which is obviously a part of Operation Zero Tolerance, so that makes sense. And the whole idea with Prime Sentinels, if you're not familiar, is basically they turn people into Sentinels. Yeah, so they turn people into Sentinels. And I think there might even be a thing in the comics where they've turned mutants into Sentinels as well. So I'm wondering if that's where we're going when it's revealed that Magneto has been kidnapped by Bastion. I think it could go the way of Bastion is either going to use Magneto to start an all-out war, possible, or this is going to be Bastion is going to try to turn Magneto into a Sentinel. There's definitely going to be some brainwashing, something is involved. But to me, it was implied that he was going to give him some kind of surgery. I don't know if I was just... That's the vibe I was picking up, but that's the vibe that I was picking up. So I'm just going to share that with you, and it is creepy as heck. Bastion is scary. I love the voice for Bastion. I love everything we're doing with Bastion. Horrifying. The question is, why are Bastion and Sinister working in tandem? It seems that Sinister has something that he's supposed to get out of this. And that's why he's in league with Bastion. And I'm just wondering, like, what that will be and where we're going to go with that. Probably something related to ultimate genetic stuff, because Sinister loves, like, super genes. That's what he's into. So I'm wondering, yeah, what that will be. Maybe Bastion is going to give Sinister some of the mutants. He's going to, like, keep them and then, like, give them to Sinister to experiment on. I don't know. Bastion is also interesting because he's from the future. And we also get Cable in this, who very much dismisses Jean as not his mom. Cable comes to help in this kind of final fight, and I think we're probably also going to end up going back to the future really soon to find out what happened to Cable when he was a baby. Hopefully get to see Bishop, because I miss Bishop. I've said this multiple times, but I do miss Bishop. And then also to, I feel like, deal with some of the stuff that's going to be happening with Cable and Scott. Because Cable also seems to brush his dad off. He's like, hey, Dad. He just seems so over it. Because it's like he knows that Scott abandoned him at the beginning of his life, I think. Because Scott didn't choose to come with Maddie to say goodbye to Cable. Which I still don't understand why you wouldn't just go to say goodbye to your son. Like I said, Scott has had some pretty bad moments in this show. And that was one of them. That was a low for me. Yeah, I'm interested to see where we go next. I feel like this episode was full of fun twists and turns and reveals, and it's clearly the build up to the big one. Episodes 8 through 10, which I think is going to be really fast and really build on the foundation of everything we've had in the lead up in this season. And I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that we're going to see there that's going to call back to earlier on in the season that we might not have even known was setting stuff up, which I'm so excited for, and I really hope that's what we get. Some really good, like, smoking guns and just callbacks. Okay, so we still have some things that are coming our way. So we have Apocalypse, I think, is still in there, and Dark Phoenix is things that I've seen. I think Apocalypse is going to show up. We'll see. Dark Phoenix, I feel like we're also going to be doing some stuff with that, which I'm excited for. And some new stuff is in here. So we have Nimrod. Nimrod is basically who Bastion ends up being. Bastion is Nimrod, but also Nimrod is also kind of their own thing as well. So I don't know where we'll go with that. If Nimrod will be created or if Bastion will actually become Nimrod, because that I've seen both of those things happen in the comics. We've also got Sentinels, which show up at the final bit where everyone's running in together. We have Magneto on one side and Professor X on the other side, and they run in. Behind them now are Sentinels, and there also seems to be, like, civilians, like, running. I think that's who that is. So the implication to me there is that at the end, it's not going to be, like, Professor X versus Magneto. It might be that, like, everyone, all the mutants have to team up to, like, fight the Sentinels. But we'll see. That's just the theory. That's just an X-Men 97 theory. So let me know your thoughts on where you think we're going next, what you think this big one is going to be. Do you think we're going to time travel? I hope we're going to time travel. I would love some time travel mixed in. Love to see Bishop again. Who would you like to see more of? Who would you like to maybe see less of? What do you think is going to happen when Charles comes back? I mean, there's just so many. I can't wait to see more Storm. Storm is not in this episode at all. And I'm like, Storm taking her time getting back here. I guess she's riding that horse all the way back. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what comes next. But all I know is that I'm hyped. My overall rating for this episode, I think I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It really was really great, especially for what it's building. I love so much of it. Going back to it is a delight. I can't wait till this whole season is out so I can just go back and watch all of it again. Okay, this review has been too long, so I'm going to stop it here. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye! Also, if you were wondering, yes, this is Wolverine on this shirt. It's Wolverine fighting Sauron, not Lord of the Rings Sauron, X-Men Sauron. He was a dinosaur man. And I got it. It was gifted to me by this really amazing company called Roosevelt. And their shirts are, like, so nice, guys. Like, they're pricey, but they're really nice. Like, the fabric. Breathable. Anyways, that's all I have to say. And I'll see you next time. All right. Bye.